I'm Leonard Scott Collins, and this is the Qabalah of Twin Peaks, where we look at every episode of Twin Peaks by the numbers. We. Why do people do that we thing? It's just me. It's just one idiot sitting here with a fucking camera. We. We've been working hard all week to bring you the. As I watched episode 2 of Twin Peaks for about the 7th, 9th time. And let's look at this amazing dowsing operation that Cooper's devised that came to him in a dream. He says he's trying to bring together, what does he say, strength, skill, and the deepest level of intuition. You see these guys with like bent coat hangers or like wooden sticks, and they're wandering over their rural property, trying to find underground water so they know where to dig their well or whatever. And it's just this subtle boop, boop, points down towards the ground. And when that happens, they think they're crossing over water. I know that David Lynch does radionics stuff, and there's dowsing involved in that too. When you're taking your rate, you check for nobody knows what I'm doing. You have a machine with a dial on it, like a little radio, and you tune the radio by rubbing your fingers across a stick pad and waiting. And when the fingers stop against this smooth plastic, when the plastic seems to become sticky, that means you've got the right number. So, you know, David Lynch does dowsing, I'm sure. It's part of the radionics process. And this film, we've got a character inventing sort of a really bizarre, idiosyncratic dowsing process where he throws a rock at a milk jug and tries to break it. And we're not going to discuss what that means in the context of the mystery, because hopefully you already know. But the point is that he's got 8 names written on his little blackboard there, all of which start with J. There's no J in the Hebrew alphabet, but often the Hebrew Y, which is the Yud, the first letter of both Jesus and Jehovah is a Y. It's the Yod. I think Yod is what Hermeticists say, including myself. I'm in a silly mood this morning. You're gonna have to put up with me because I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm a little bit looped. So Yod. All of the names on his list start with J or Y, which is an important letter. It's the fiery part of your tetragrammaton, the word Jehovah, Yod He Vav He, and it's sort of the beginning of creation. The top 2 sephira of the sphere of the tree of life are sort of involved in Yodness. So everything kind of spirals out from there. So I mean, this is even though we've been doing lots of detective work in episode 1, this is kind of maybe the beginning of the fire that's going to lead us through the rest of the series. And it's our first glimpse of something a little spookier that's going to be really, really important and increasingly important as we go along. So there's a lot of seeds that sprout in this moment. So maybe that's why J. Also, the mysteries of the letter J are wrapped up with death and resurrection. The tarot card is the Hermit, not the Hangman, which would be death and resurrection, but well, I won't say much more about that because it's unformed. But remember, Jesus begins with the letter J in English, as well as the two Johns, the two prophets John, and a few other things. But maybe it's more about a reclusive teacher than it is about really resurrection. I guess I'm misspeaking there. And so he's got these 8 names on his blackboard. And 8 is the 8th Sephirah, is the Sephirah Hod, which is also a little bit Jesus-y according to Crowley. I mean, traditionally Jesus would be in Tefereth, which would be the number 6, but Crowley in the Paris working gets a bunch of stuff about, hey, look, Jesus is to do with fish, and Jesus does all these miracles of transmutation, and there's a few other justifications that aren't coming to me now, but the mercurial nature of Jesus comes clear to Crowley in the Paris working. So maybe that's why 8 and J together. The tarot card for Mercury, all the way up in the opposite corner of the Tree of Life, if Hod is down here, the path of Beth is up here. There's a relationship, but whereas the path of the Magus is about those 4 elemental weapons in balanced usage by a powerful magician down in the sphere of Hod. I mean, this is more about kind of maybe intellectual development. At least this is the way, because this is the way it's handled in an initiatory system where you're going up through the paths of return from your, training in magic. Hod is seen as sort of a place where academic intelligence is developed. You learn all your correspondences, and you might learn a divination system as well, like how to read tarot cards or how to do astrology or something like this. And there's a harmony there, because remember, in the 3rd grade of your AA or your Golden Dawn system, you're in the 8th Sephirah, and then you keep climbing up, and when you're in the 8th grade, you're in the 3rd Sephirah, so 8-3 and 3-8. They're the top and the bottom of the pillar of severity. So the watery power of Binah is expressed down in Hod. So there's a relationship between those two things, about like a subtle relationship between, being across the abyss and being, this little pile of dust in the city of the pyramids versus this kind of more this training of the ego. But it's a training of the ego that should allow it to express something subtler underneath. So this is this dowsing operation where Cooper's hucking rocks to see what the truth is. He's trying to use this technique he's developed to get at something beneath the level of the intellect. So you're pointing to anti-rationalism or counter-rationalism or post-rationalism, the limits of what's rational and seeing what's beyond that. One of the names gets crossed off. One of the names is accidentally of a place. So we really only have 7. So it's this thing about being unfinished. That's a clue, if Cooper's really being responsive to the clues in the environment. He should notice this. He should notice that he's selected 8 names and put them up on the wall, like a good mercurial, hodish, watery magic type that can get these types of insights through dowsing and other related techniques. But that he's made a mistake, and really there's only 7 names, and so that should clue his intuition into the idea that he's not going to get the desired result. He's close, but Bob doesn't begin with J, and neither does Leland Palmer. So there's sort of missing some stuff. I'm thinking about whether or not I want to go to the double R and talk about Raish and the tarot card for the sun. The path of Raish is attributed to the sun. It's both the name of the card and the planetary association to the letter. The number is 200, and on the tarot card there's a little hill with a fence around it and 2 angels sort of guarding, dancing over top. 2 angels, double R, and this is it's the Garden of Eden being protected after the fall of man, and so even with Twin Peaks in disarray, the double R is still the warm center of town, still Edenic, idyllic. The fall of man hasn't happened there. And the story of Eden is the story of 2s. There's Adam and his wife Cheva, and some strife between them because of the interloping serpent, and maybe there's Ed and Norma and the interloping serpents of their unhappy matches. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't know if I wanted to talk about that today. Oh, Andy gets hit in the head with one of those fucking rocks. One of the punishments after the fall is that the serpent is going to bruise the woman on the heel, and the woman is going to bruise the serpent on the head. And the serpent seems like a bad guy in the story of the Revelation, but in the story of initiation, you have the Kundalini all wound up in your belly, and as you do your breathing exercises, you open those Ida and Pingala channels. The breath goes in and you hold it, and then you breathe out through the opposite nostril. So there's the sense of the breath having to move from the left to the right lung through the bottom of the body. Of course, physiologically, that's not how it works, but there's this sense of the energy moving this way in sort of a U shape across the belly, which excites the Kundalini down here deep in the pelvic bowl, and it starts to rise up the spine. And so you have you ignite the serpent of your spiritual energy, which in this case could maybe be your intuition. As you progress in yoga. And so the serpent getting wounded on the head, watch for wounds on the head and wounds on the heel. I am not your foot, for example. Andy gets wounded on the head and says it doesn't hurt, and then Truman says, where there's no sense, there's no pain, which you could think of different ways to interpret that in terms of, like dead bodies don't feel, and so there's like something sorrowful in there, even though it's a joke and everyone's happily laughing. But Andy is sort of like a senseless kook, but watch the times where his foolish, and I use that word carefully, foolish bumbling really helps the investigation. I think he later discovers Leo's boots filled with money, drug money maybe, or something. We'll get there when we get there. But Andy, because of his senselessness, he actually has deep feeling. He's able to cry at the scenes of crimes, which is he's the only one who can give that appropriate response to unwrapping a dead body. Everyone else is callous. And he has this kind of natural man thing going on where he's able to get to the truth much more easily than some of our more professional characters. And that would be included into that here. Where there's no sense, there's no feeling. So it's deep feeling in Andy. One-Eyed Jacks. The Jacks have these dubious historical associations. You know, the King of Clubs is supposed to be a particular figure, and the King of Diamonds is supposed to be a particular figure. Like one of them is Caesar Augustus, and one of them is not Napoleon, but maybe Alexander of Macedon or something like this. And I can't remember the chap's name just now, but the Jack of Hearts, who's one of the two with only one eye, and you'll see on the logo the J is red. Also, there's all this sex happening at One-Eyed Jack, so you can imagine it being a place of the heart, of misexpressed lusts, you might want to say, or depending on your feelings of prostitution. But the Jack of Hearts is associated with some military general, some French general, who's the only one of few of Joan of Arc's contemporaries who really believed in her gifts and believed that she had the power to receive prophecy. So, again, there's another link in this episode, this idea of inspiration, intuition, and in this case particularly female inspiration and female intuition. Here we see later we see in Cooper's dream those 12 candles again, now around a dirt pile like Laura's. And those candles get blown out, so all the 12 candles because of the zodiac. So all those elements that make up the personality, the different planets in the different signs get blown away, leaving only a little pile of dust in the city of the pyramids. Here we're pointing at that 8-3 attainment again. That's the last thing I need to talk about. Thank you for reminding me. Leland Palmer is standing at his Victrola, and he's trying to put on a record, and he's having a hard time because he's emotional, so his hands keep shaking, and he's breathing this weird breath pattern. He goes 2, 3, 1. There's a magical word for this type of arrangement, which I won't give because I don't know how published it is, but the mathematical term, they call it a triangular number. And so 3, 1, 2, 3. The triangular number of 3 is 6, because if 1, 2, 3 is the base of a pyramid, then you have imagine building with like little wooden blocks or something like that. You have 3, and then on the next layer you have 2, and then on the next layer you have 1, and you build a pyramid. You can make a triangle by going 3, 2, 1. And then if you were to put another layer on the bottom, you need 4 blocks, another layer on the bottom, you need 5 blocks. So every number has a triangular number, but not every number is a triangular number. For example, you can't make a triangle with 2, but the triangular number of 2 is 3. The bottom, and the way you find these triangular numbers is by, let's say, the triangular number of 10, which I think is 55. You add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10. Then you count the number of blocks you've used, and then you get that triangular number, 55. The number 6, I think we've done this in a longer video before, one of the ones that isn't labeled to an episode that I was doing around the time we were watching The Return Part 8. But the number 6 is important because it's the 6th Sephiroth of Tefereth, which is the Sephirah of beauty. And it's the place in the aspirant's career where he meets and connects in a permanent way with his holy guardian angel. I should say her holy guardian angel, because in that the angel takes the male role and comes down and fills up the aspirant. So regardless of the sex of the aspirant, you can be male or female, but you're taking the female role in receiving the angel, the receptive role. So Leland is doing some knocking here, right? Which is something we do in a ritual opening to kind of communicate maybe our grade of initiation. If we know the knock for a specific sphere, then that shows we're entitled to open it. There's also grips and words and signs. But there's all sorts of patterns of knocks and bell rings in Hermetic practice, modern Hermetic practice, and Leland seems to be doing one that's oriented around the number 6 or maybe the number 3. So there's a relationship there between the crossing of the abyss, the initiation in Binah, or the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, the initiation to Ferrith. So the knock Leland is doing is about the abyss, but into Ferrith. And the way Leland relates to Bob really does seem like the way an aspirant might relate to the HGA, where the angel at first seems like a passenger, and then the aspirant seems like the passenger riding the angel along, and there's this open communication all the time, where you're working together on projects and trying to discover the fullest realization, the fullest possible realization of yourself, exploiting your gifts. Now, I don't think Bob is an angel. I have an idea, at least not in the sense that the HGA would be. And not only because he's a murderous sex fiend, but also because I have some positive ideas about Bob's identity that we can get into later. But in a sense, the relationship with Bob has allowed Leland to fulfill his terrible destiny and given him kind of an excuse to become the man he would have become anyway. So even though it's perverse and terrible and heartbreaking and sad, there is that number 6 is appropriate here. And as soon as he brings it in, as soon as he succeeds in bringing it in, he begins doing that terrible spiral dance with Laura's photo and freaks everybody the fuck out. I don't know what Kabbalistic significance this has, but the birds sing a pretty song and there's always music in the air. Pretty and beautiful are related concepts, so maybe this points back to Tefereth, which is Hebrew for beauty, that same number 6, where we come from. Maybe we come from Tefereth, which psychologically speaking would be like the center of the ego, or the beginning of, not the center of the ego in terms of like what you think of as the center of your own mind, but the center of the ego being like the relationship between those things that are a little bit latent and those things that are fully expressed. The true middle, not the perceived middle. I'm kind of petering out, and I would have liked to have ended with confidence since the video is so long and I'm doing such a goof off, but I'm tanking. So anyway, that's plenty of what I wanted to get out about the numbers of today's episode. Thank you for watching the Qabalah of Twin Peaks. I've been Leonard Scott Collins, and this is absolute nonsense.